General Meese, Ursula, Tony, ladies and gentlemen. The most precise axiom in politics is that personnel is policy. It explains why the Reagan administration continues to be the gold standard of governance. Ronald Reagan was necessary, indispensable to that picture, but he was by no means alone. Indeed, his great accomplishments, his very political career, could not have been possible but for certain men and women surrounding him. We think of the names, and they're the stuff of giants, stuff of legend. Cap Weinberger, Bill Casey, Judge Clark, Lynn Nofsinger, Dick Allen, Bill Bennett, Gene Kirkpatrick. They were the 27 Yankees, the 85 Bears, and the 86 Celtics combined. When the closing whistle blew in January of 1989, they sailed off to blissful retirement, their jobs well done, their accomplishments historic. Some went even further to the hallowed halls of Valhalla. I can only conclude that Ronald Reagan's trusted friend, White House counselor and Attorney General Ed Meese, must have been sick that day because he didn't get the memo about retirement. He went back to work, and he kept going and going and going. 21 years later, he's still at it. We honor Ed Meese tonight, not because he keeps going, but because he just won't stop. The day after the disastrous 2008 elections, I convened a meeting of about 20 top conservatives at my mountain eyrie to begin the work necessary to start rebuilding the conservative movement. It turns out, quite coincidentally, the good folks at Heritage were doing the very same thing with their team. To make the trifecta complete, separately, our friend Tony Perkins had convened the family groups to plan their slog out of the darkness. Shortly thereafter, Tony got the call from the general, and so did I. What if we joined forces, a small, manageable group of us, and together set out to rebuild the future? On the appointed Wednesday morning, we met for breakfast at 7:30, and the Conservative Action Project was born. We've continued to meet virtually every single Wednesday morning since that day. The first order of business that first meeting was to declare unequivocally that our little group was, in every sense, a coordinating committee for CAP, which has now grown to over 100 conservative groups around the country. In no way were we to be seen as some sort of Star Chamber power grab. Quite the contrary. We were there to help the movement, to better plan, to better coordinate, and better execute. Still, this coordinating committee needed a chair. There was no debate, there was no discussion. Someone suggested the general, and all of us nodded. So the general it was, and the general it's been ever since. Having shared Tony's breakfast donuts with General Meese dozens upon dozens of Wednesdays ever since, I've come to appreciate a number of things about this remarkable man. First, when you dip into Tony's box of assorted Dunkin' Donuts, do not, repeat, do not take the one with the garish strawberry icing and sprinkles. That one's reserved for General Meese. Tony, am I right about that? I'm right. Second, this is a man possessed of a profound wisdom, born of deep conviction and honed by a lifetime of experience. There is great camaraderie and joviality on the coordinating committee. That doesn't mean there's always agreement. In fact, the debates are often spirited, sometimes even heated. Now watch the general. The more spirited and heated, the quieter he becomes. When finally he interjects himself into the discussion, it's to offer a proposed resolution. Bam! Always, always he lasers in on the important points with the correct assessment and appropriate course of action. In seconds, it's over. Those of us who had exhausted ourselves with our very loud brilliance just moments before sit humbled in awe. He believes fervently in Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, and don't anyone violate it in his presence. Oh, there are plenty of Republicans who disappoint him and oftentimes do things that even disgust him. But if there's one thing you learn about Ed Meese, it's his sense of loyalty. He simply will not budge, no matter how much you disappoint him politically or hurt him personally. He will not reciprocate against you. Because Ed Meese is simply one of the kindest men I've ever known. No matter how low or beginning your station in life, you will be afforded the utmost courtesy from this man, because it's not just in his DNA, it is his DNA. Almost 30 years ago, I was a relatively snot-nosed young punk doing some fundraising somewhere, and a donor approached me with a complex legal concern about which I hadn't a clue. I took it to my boss, who said, "Send it to Ed Meese." I looked at him and I said, "You mean Attorney General of the United States of America, Ed Meese?" He said, "Yes." So I did, feeling very foolish, knowing it was, of course, a waste of time. 2 weeks later, a lengthy response came in the mail, a personal letter from Ed Meese, attached to it explaining, with all sorts of legal documentation, explaining the complexities of the matter. Of course, you have no memory of that, Ed, do you? How could you? How could you possibly remember the thousands, the tens of thousands acts of kindness and decency and thoughtfulness that have marked your life? But those of us, the thousands of us on the receiving end of it, do remember. Ed, it's why we're here tonight, honoring you. Honoring you, yes, but we who have been chosen to make these presentations are also honored for being given the opportunity to express our profound gratitude and deepest personal affection. God bless you, General.